Well, hello. A very warm welcome to this short Zenith International webinar on the 2015 Global Bottled Water Congress and Market Trends. I see lots of familiar names, including some of the speakers at the Congress. My name is Richard Hall. I'm the chairman of Zenith, and I'm joined by Esther Renfrew, our Market Intelligence Director.
Hello, everybody.
I'll present first on the Congress, and then Esther will highlight some of the market trends. We'll finish with an opportunity for questions. Do send through your questions as they come to mind. So first, let's introduce our 2015 Global Bottled Water Congress. It's our 12th. It takes place on the 20th to the 22nd of October at the Myriad Hotel in Lisbon. We're holding the event in association with Food Bev Media and supported by Beverage Daily. We already have more than 70 delegates booked from many of the top global and regional producers. We're sponsored by leading industry supplier Bericap and supported by a number of other kind companies. This year we also have the Global Bottled Water Awards presented at the gala dinner. The full program and online booking details are at the zenithinternational.com website. There are discounted rates available until Friday. We've had previous congresses all around the world. Our aim has been to take you as a delegate to the best of the water markets around Europe and the rest of the world. In the early years we went to Evian and San Pellegrino. We've also been to Brazil and the United States. This year we're in Portugal, and the very modern setting on the waterside in Lisbon, which is where the Myriad Hotel is, and it's just minutes from the airport, which is incredibly convenient. The conference theme is added value. We're going to start with 3 market insight briefings. We've got the highlight of the gala dinner and the Global Bottled Water Awards. And just dealing with a bit more of the content, we've got these market insight briefings which cover global beverage trends, global bottled water, including enhanced waters and innovation. Then we've got some time devoted to the regional market in the southwest of Europe and the European market. Some global market perspectives, especially on international growth. We'll take a special look at Water Plus and premiumization. We've got a very senior panel on the European market and its challenges, and we'll end on innovation and investment. Our speakers, we've got many from international companies, Ache, which is now a global business, the Coca-Cola Company, IDS Borjomi, leaders in East Europe, Nestle Waters as world #1, and Tata from India. Also many regional leaders and innovators, Karlovarska from Czech Republic, Ferrarelle from Italy, Petropolis from Brazil, Tibet 5100 from China, Unicer hosting from Portugal. Various industry representatives and advisors, including the President of the European Federation of Bottled Waters, plus industry suppliers. So I do hope you'll all attend. It should be a very worthwhile event. I'm going to hand over now to Esther.
Well, thank you, Richard. Okay, so I'm just going to take you through a very short snapshot of the global bottled water trends to give you a flavour of what we'll be talking about during the Congress in Lisbon. So first of all, I wanted to really talk about the bottled water success, and I thought by putting it into its context would be useful to see. So on this chart here, we're covering 72 countries, and the soft red line on your screens, that's where the bottled water category is fitting in under this chart, and you can see the performance of that sector as year-on-year increases. Bear in mind it's got carbonates and other categories in there. We'll go into details shortly as to what's there. So soft beverages, soft drinks are doing very well, outperforming the rest of the market, both in growth and in size, and obviously higher than the hot beverages such as tea and coffee, alcoholic beverages and milk, both flavoured and white plain milk. So again, this chart really shows you the success of bottled water over the last 5 years. It's shown the additional volume in billions of litres over 5 years that each of these categories have given. And you can see how bottled water is leading that growth with an additional 92 billion litres over the last 5 years. So very impressive growth, both in percentage terms and in actual volume terms. As I mentioned, the soft drinks category, we can break it down into its further components. Carbonates is the leading category, but under pressure due to its high sugar content and some of the taxation that we've seen in countries like Mexico. And then you've got the 2 bottled water categories, the small pack format, which is less than 10 litres, and then the larger format which is greater than 10 litres, or the cooler market, or bulk water, or 5 gallon, depending on how people refer to that. Then you've got some smaller categories there, the fruit drinks, dilutables, iced tea, and still drinks. So you can see how water is outperforming those categories within the soft drinks. If you break it into its further down into its smaller components, here we can see where flavoured water fits in within those categories. So juices in the red at the top, followed by nectars, flavoured milk, sports drinks, and then flavoured waters is the black line. So again, you can see how since 2004, the growth of flavoured water has been pretty much impressive. It obviously had a little bit of a lull in 2008, 2009, but it has shown some further growth compared to some of the other categories. However, energy drinks looks like it's going to overtake in the coming years. I wanted to show again a split by percentage terms. Again, this echoes what I've just been talking about. On the left here in 2009, the volume in percentage terms of the different categories. Bottled water there was 14% back in 2009. It now accounts for 17% in 2014. So it's taken considerable share, predominantly from carbonates, from milk and from beer. So going into a bit more detail into bottled water, here it shows you the size of the bottled water market, reaching nearly 350 billion litres in 2014. 2014 saw a growth of 7.4%, and that was an acceleration on 2013's increase. So over the last 4 years, bottled water has consistently been over 7% growth a year. It's a very impressive record, and it's set to continue. So where's this bottled water coming from? This chart shows very quickly where the growth is coming from. Back in 2009, Asia accounted for 31%. Now it accounts for 39%. Out of those countries, it's China, Indonesia, which are propelling growth there.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second just to say that the previous chart included flavoured and functional water, and this one is plain water.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks. Also, some of the smaller regions, Africa and the Middle East, that's also was a smaller percentage of the total bottled water market. You're seeing it increase from 12% to 13% share. Here are the top 10 growth countries of bottled water. China vastly in the lead with 32 billion litres added over the last 5 years in volume terms. That's followed by Indonesia, and some of the other Asian markets, India and Vietnam, also appear. So Asia heavily propelling the growth, as we saw from the other charts. We've also got Brazil there, Mexico, and some of the Middle East countries, Saudi and Turkey. I wanted to talk about the Aqua Plus. People refer it to in all sorts of different ways, whether it's enhanced water or Water Plus or Aqua Plus. In essence, these are flavoured waters or functional waters. On this chart, you can see the red flavoured water growth and the functional. Flavoured is the larger category out of the two. Both are growing and both are showing good promise. So what are the key growth components to global Aqua Plus growth? It's very interesting to know how much innovation is happening in this category. Again, something we'll be talking about in Lisbon. And some of these trends are about adult-oriented flavoured waters, stevia-sweetened Water Plus beverages, child-orientated ones, as you see on the left of your screen, and citrus-flavoured, also very much on trend at the moment. Other areas of growth that we're seeing in the category would be energy waters. As we saw on an earlier chart how well energy drinks are doing, water is now embracing that as a functional aspect. Protein functional waters, again we've seen growth in some of the other categories in the food and drinks market, and water now we're seeing more products with protein in. And then there's packaging innovation, whether that be in cartons or with flavours that you can twist in the cap and so forth. There's been a tremendous amount of innovation happening to really sustain that growth and propel it forward. So because we're short on time, I just wanted to summarise really the main themes that have been coming out. Without a doubt, the developing regions of Asia Pacific, Latin America and Africa and Middle East will continue to drive bottled water growth. And this is often driven by necessity due to the low quality of available water. The core messages for bottled water is really one of health and hydration, which has very much enabled volume gain from other categories. Zenith sees ongoing strong growth in the bottled water market. It's been strong over the last 5 years, and we're predicting this to continue into the forecasted period. So in terms of Aqua Plus, we know it's much more niche, but it's growing and it's much more value added. Again, a theme very strong in our Lisbon event. It is also very selective in certain countries as to which categories are doing well, whether it's more the flavoured or the functional. Innovation is key. As we showed some of the products earlier, innovation is key to sustain the growth in the category and keep the consumer engaged, hence the level of investment and also the risk. But there's also a return for that level of investment and risk, because we know the pricing and the value added is certainly very positive and well received by consumers. So with that, just like to say thank you very much for listening. Please give us any questions. I've put some information there should you want to have any more information on any of our reports and services.
Thank you, Esther. Do send through your questions as they occur to you. We've got a few come through already, and we'll take them as they come. And please do make sure that we cover the ground that you want, though clearly a lot more of the information will be presented at the conference. First question is about energy waters, which you just mentioned. Are energy waters really water?
Very good question. I think one of the main interesting points out of this is actually the categories are starting to blur a little bit, and that's what we're seeing in the beverage market. So at the moment we've obviously tried to define the market in different ways, but clearly there are cross categories that are happening. Energy water, in effect, is a functional water that is offering more energy. It's water-based, so there's always a debate as to whether it's energy, an energy drink or energy water, but fundamentally it's a water with added energy. So yes, I would say it's still a water.
And the next question also about innovation was which innovation is most exciting? I think there's such a blurring, a confusion of innovation that it's heading off in all sorts of directions, isn't it?
I think that's what's very exciting about the category, is that you're seeing lots of different types of innovation, that people aren't just on one type of innovation, there's lots of diversification there, and I think that's about understanding the consumer and relevant markets, what resonates most with them, and also understanding what they're competing against, and sometimes how sceptical consumers can be, or what is on trend in particular countries and regions.
I've got a very simple question here. What about the environment?
Good question. Certainly a few years ago the bottled water industry was having quite a lot of difficulty with the environment. We saw lots of lobbying and campaigns and people taking out bottled water vending machines and so forth. That seems to have died down a little bit. I think what people have understood actually is the message of health and hydration, and that's really important in the category, and that's something to reinforce, is actually other alternatives. If you're looking for an on-the-go consumption, quite frequently they're sugar-based beverages, and water actually offers something that's healthier, and I think that has now, not totally, but certainly the consumers understood that a little bit more. I mean, there's always going to be a question over packaging, undoubtedly, and I know the industry is working hard to try and do the best it can within its means.
I sort of see a future in which once governments and local governments do actually perform best practice in recycling and collection, and once we have plant-based plastics which are fully recyclable, then there will be less of an issue, and people may then be looking at better performing, less light plastic bottles, so that we don't have quite the same argument about the environment. But I think that's a long way down the road. We've got quite a few more questions. One about liquid water enhancers. Is this picking up, or is it not going anywhere?
That's a really interesting one. Certainly a couple of years ago there was a lot of buzz around liquid water enhancers, and people were very interested as to its advancements. It did very well in the States. It was coming across into Europe. We've seen a limited amount of success. It certainly has been something that's come and gone relatively quickly. There is still products there. Private label offering came along very quickly, for example, in the UK market, showing the level of interest and innovation in that category, and it was something that the water industry was very interested in seeing how that was going to invigorate their sales. I think it's not been as a long-term success as perhaps people were anticipating when it first came out.
Question about hydrogen-rich water. and whether that's a big thing or developing or any impact.
Good question. Again, some of these are very niche categories. I think that's something that could be of interest. There's certainly talk of hydrogenated water and how that has benefits and health and so forth. That's probably as much as I can comment on at the minute.
My sense is that lots and lots of things are being explored, but consumers don't necessarily perceive the benefit from some of the extra functionality, whether scientific or lifestyle, and those will have their converts, but possibly not that many. Now, next question, premium Aqua Plus, should this be considered as a premium innovation?
I think it depends on the positioning. What we're seeing obviously is the price points are very different. If you compare the average price of a bottled water compared to a flavoured water and certainly a functional water, there are certainly very different price points, sometimes 3 times per litre more expensive if you're looking at the functional category, sometimes even more. Not always necessarily a premium offering. If it's a flavoured water, it might just purely be competing against a carbonate and offering something that is less sugary but more interesting than bottled water, so it just might have an additional benefit. It really depends on the brand and the category and the country that you're looking at, but there are certainly levels of added value that you're seeing in those categories of both flavoured and functional.
The average price of plain water is around 50 cents a litre. The average price of flavoured water is nearer $1, and the average price of functional water is nearer $2. So that is evidence of quite a premium for these added content waters. So I'm speaking from recall rather than from reference, so I may not be absolutely right on that, but I know that we're going to be presenting the figures at the Congress. Next question was about definition of with all the different categories of non-alcoholic beverages, is there some sort of definition which is understood globally of the different categories? Well, there isn't for soft drinks, that's for sure, because soft drinks in some countries are carbonated soft drinks. In some countries they're carbonated and still flavoured soft drinks, excluding fruit juices. In our case, they include juices and waters and concentrates, as well as carbonated and still. So that's our definition. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, that's an interesting one. I'd say also in terms of what I mentioned earlier, there's certainly a blurring of the categories as well as different categories move into others. So juicy waters is a prime example of a blurring of categories. So it's not necessarily as easy to identify these days.
We don't include yogurt drinks and flavoured milks, and it may be not so long before we perhaps should consider that. Any runway for flexible packages for water?
Yeah, and we've interesting in terms of packaging for water. We've done quite a few studies in the packaging of water and the innovation around that. In countries such as Nigeria and some of the South American countries, you've got a lot of water in pouches, which are actually seen as a very basic product, but you're also seeing some innovation in terms of response to the environment, of having things that are actually much more flexible and having packaging that you can throw away or recycle in an easier format. So certainly there's been certain brands that have experimented with that, certainly not mainstream at the moment.
Okay, well, we are running out of time, I'm afraid, because we said we'd be 20 minutes and we ought to keep to that. Let me just finish by saying that 7% growth in the current economic climate is a major achievement and shows a natural momentum for something that comes from nature and is looked after by bottled water. And we look forward to seeing many of you at the Congress, because there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of care that must be taken about managing that opportunity. Esther, thank you very much. Thank you to you for attending. We'll send you access to the slides from the presentation. I'm sorry about the sound earlier on. I hope we lost that echo that one or two of you mentioned. And thank you all for joining us.